Good evening, everyone. I'm Al, not here with Ari this evening. This is the Nonlinear Love Podcast where fairy tales don't exist. So we're going to tell actual stories of dating, romance, breakups, and divorce. Here with us tonight, Moses Storm. He is an actor, comedian, writer, a son, a sibling, and a lot more. A very unique individual with a lot of talent. How you doing, Moses?
Doing great. Yeah. It's quite the intro. Thank you.
Of course.
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
So, you born in Kalamazoo, Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer for people is like, yeah, I'm from Kalamazoo if you don't have a lot of time or you don't want to get into it. But I grew up all over the US. Parents moved out. Was born in Kalamazoo, but then we were traveling for the first 10 years of my life.
How come?
My parents were traveling missionaries for a religion that they made up. It was a spin-off of Judaism and Christianity. They made their own thing, and along with two other families, decided to go with their each had five kids, one had six, and spread the word of this new religion that doesn't have a name. Can't believe it didn't catch on. And the effort was to travel to as many places, go to as many public events like outside of farmers markets, rock concerts, and go out there with big neon signs and spread the word of this religion.
Where'd you travel?
A lot of Florida. I mean, it sounds more romantic than it actually is. So they got a decommissioned Greyhound bus, ripped all the seats out of it, and then tried to make their version of a live-in bus. Didn't work out. And a lot of the South, mirrored a lot of the South, so South Carolina, North Carolina, Arkansas, Florida, a lot of Ohio, which it was basically whatever the bus could take as far as insulation. Like if you didn't need insulation, we could travel there. We could spread God's word as long as there's no, uh, as long as we're not going to freeze to death in a 40-foot diesel tube.
And it was you and how many siblings?
I have four siblings, so there were seven of us in there at the beginning, all seven of us in there. And my dad built us bunk beds, three high in the back of the bus. And this model of GMC bus, the diesel engine is right in the back of the bus, right where the beds were. So now I can't sleep unless I fall asleep to the sound of a diesel engine raging.
How do you accomplish that?
I don't. I don't. No sleep sound. I keep sending letter to the editor and have been able to get through. I think I'm blocked.
Do you remember the last time you saw that bus?
Oh yeah, I was breaking into it. So the leader of this, my great uncle of this, let's just call it a cult for shorthand. Uh, he would make these tapes for his many followers, which were three families, and he would make these like religious sermons on tapes. And when my parents finally divorced in 1999, I don't know how the exact paperwork, but I think as a lawyer, you might appreciate this. I think it was just in a handwritten note that was notarized, but my mom got full custody of all five children, full custody, provided that my dad get custody of the bus. So
This isn't, wait, you didn't just make that up.
that's a real thing.
On a
That was
note, on a handwritten,
That's a handwritten note that was notarized, I guess presented in a Florida court, which seems like the only way you could get away with this sort of arrangement. Because I feel like any respectable judge would be like, well, just you both can't have the kids if any of you agreed to this. You can't trade children for vehicles
bus.
or bus. And I know that because I saw a copy of the paperwork, and my mom to this day like can't wait to bring that fact up. Your father chose the bus over you.
Right?
So the last time I saw the bus, I think my dad was dating again. He moved back into a campground. We moved into a double wide trailer, fancy, and the religious tapes from the cult leader were still in the bus. And there was one window, well, there was multiple windows that didn't close or lock appropriately, and I snuck through the window, being the smallest of my siblings, broke into the bus when my dad was out at Mardi Gras, I think, and broke in and stole the cassette tapes of all these religious sermons.
What'd you do with them?
I just gave them to my mom. I mean, I didn't take anything from there. It wasn't a lot of stuff of value. When I say we lived in a converted bus, people are picturing the best version of it. They're picturing like the HDTV bus where everything folds up and folds in, and it's a lot of care and detail put into it. This was the best way to describe the bus is other people at campgrounds would just have regular Winnebagos and RVs, and they would see the bus pull up, and they'd you always it was a conversation starter like, oh my god, you guys you converted a bus, can we take a tour? People would take maybe two steps inside, look around, and be like, "Oh, I think I got it. I'm good. No, I don't. No, I don't need to see anymore."
So, all right, well, we have a few directions to go in, but question for you. You've
Yes.
heard of parents who might say to their kids, like they spend time preparing dinner and their kids don't eat the food, and they'll make a comment, look, there's kids in country XYZ that are starving right now, so eat your dinner. If you could step into the shoes of a parent for a moment in that situation, would you say something like that? Do you think it has any meaning?
I think it has meaning now that this is we're jumping all over the place on
I
my
know.
end. No, you're great, but as of November, uh, I became essentially a father of four overnight, taking
Okay.
care of my younger sister's children, who are ages 11 and to so almost 2-year old, 3-year old. It's very young children that have no manners or concept of money and food. It's so backwards from the way I grew up, and everyone's a picky eater, which was not a term I grew up with. You just ate what was in front of you, and I think now, yes, I could see myself saying that. That was not something that was said growing up. We knew the value of a dollar, or at least I did. I knew the value of a dollar from a very young age. I was hyper aware that we were not only poor but living well below the poverty line. Um, some by just like socioeconomics of, two parents that don't have steady jobs or jobs, period. And then it was seen as a virtue in this religion that was a heavy emphasis on doomsday, and meaning like God's going to end the world. So there's no necessity to prepare for the future. I was felt like growing up that God was going to end the world in like maybe 22 days from right now. That was the present feeling of like, well, yeah, why would you send your kids to school? Why would we have a savings account? Why would you learn math or learn how to read when this is all about to end? That was, I think, a real guiding principle in our upbringing was that God was going to end the world exactly as the book of Revelation lays it out, with the horsemen of the apocalypse, the plagues. So there wasn't a lot of preparing your kids like most parents for the future of like getting to get grades and learn these manners and then eventually get into a good college and a steady job. That stuff was not instilled in this, and that wasn't of importance to my parents.
Why? I mean, the HBO special you did in 22, Trash White. Why that title?
Oh, because it's white trash is a thing that is used. It only now became essentially politically incorrect, but white trash doesn't fully explain us. While we were surrounded by people that would be considered white trash, using the slur and the slang, uh, ours was such a specific type of upbringing where a lot of the poverty was brought on ourselves, or my parents brought on us, because there's very simple fixes for the level of poverty that we grew up in, meaning we were on the most amount of food stamps a family can be on. We would dumpster dive for food. We would have yard sales. We would go through people's garbage and sell that at yard sales. Constantly getting evicted from places for having junk. Like a very simple fix is like just don't follow this religion that's making your life worse. You're not getting any approval from the leader. It clearly isn't working, but their justification to the best of my ability knowledge is like, well, yeah, it's hard right now, but this isn't going to last long. This is all going to come to an end. I don't know if that answers your question or just brings up 88 more questions.
Maybe 89. Maybe
Yeah,
89.
okay,
All
that's
right.
fair.
You talk about in the special growing up poor, and I know you just talk about how you were acutely aware that you were below the poverty line, but how do you go about defining that, the word poor?
Well, I think the awareness of poverty is a thing that I can't shake. You have children, right?
Yes.
So if you were to have a bad month, let's just say in a hypothetical
Right.
world, Alan's life falls apart. They finally catch you for your opioid ring that you've been secretly running
Here we
and
go.
washing money through this podcast, hiding it through there, and it all comes crashing down. You wouldn't tell your children the full truth of it. You wouldn't say how screwed you were and like the time you were facing, the how to use a correct term, how fucked you were. You wouldn't communicate that to your children. Is that fair to say?
I think it is.
We were My mom was very bad at hiding it or didn't care to hide it at all. I was very aware that we were poor from a young age because my mom would be like, "Oh my God, we're gonna get kicked out. We are screwed." Very emotional, wears her emotions on her sleeve, uh, which isn't always a negative quality, but brought me into the inner circle of our finances and how screwed we were. And I think it's really hard as a child to be hoisting yourself up into a grocery store dumpster and pulling out trash bags of food and seeing that there's no other children around you doing that, and that we have to hide when cars come back there that are just customers, definitely when the security guard comes, that when anyone knocks at our bus door we have to hide, that we're doing visits with CPS and social workers. I was very aware that we were in the counterculture and on the fringes of society, but it wasn't seen as a negative. It was seen as this is the virtuous path. This is how essentially how Jesus lived, and it's virtuous that we're poor.
Did
Uh,
you get any reprieve going to school, or did you not go to school?
did not go to school. I learned how to read and write at 16, maybe 18 slash still now. Um, I remember like first starting stand up, I would go to open mics and you have to like wait to get up a few hours. And in my joke notebook, I would hide the book Hooked on Phonics, uh, the children's reading assistance book, and still struggle with it now. I know now that I suffer from dyslexia and dysgraphia, but it was not tested for. There was no teacher to intervene. On paper, with the government, we were homeschooled, but no school ever.
Did you get a chance to make friends, given the way you were going from place to place, or no?
And be corrupted by Satan's minions? No. Anyone outside of this religion was off limits with high consequences to pay, whether it be physical or verbal abuse. Yeah, any other child was like doomed to hell, and no, there was no friends. And if we ever hinted at it, then that was hell to pay. So there was
How
no other one your age you could confide in besides maybe your siblings, but then we were all under the same indoctrination. So if you're not around other kids, if you are physically in a hot dumpster in Panama City, Florida, if you are constantly getting kicked out of places, people are yelling at my mom in public. Even when we're street preaching, people are tearing down our neon signs that say you're headed for hell. Christians will burn. Yes, very aware that we were not like other kids, to put it lightly.
how after your parents divorced, did you break from the religion or no?
Yeah, just because yeah, we broke from the religion. The most peaceful thing that happened to me was my parents' divorce. I think a lot of people in their early 30s are I hear stories of like, yeah, my trauma is like when my parents divorced, my whole safety net fell apart. And on my end, I life got a little bit better. At least in that there's like, oh, these two people that hate each other that were essentially guilted into being married because they got pregnant before they fell in love. Uh, they're no longer around each other. They're no longer yelling at each other. There's no longer this strife. Uh, so it was like, oh, good, we're out of that. That lasted maybe like 4 hours, and then they were fighting about a new thing. But I saw their breakup as a positive for me in a way. It was not like "Ugh, everything fell apart when they divorced. Things got a little easier when they divorced.
After they divorced, do you remember hearing the words child support ever or no?
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I heard that very often before I even understood the concept of money and investing or anything. Uh, I heard child support. Your father doesn't pay child support. It was a huge that is a triggering word. More than divorce is child support. Because when my dad stopped paying, my mom stopped allowing weekend visitations. She took it upon herself to be oh, he doesn't care, moved us across the country to California where my uncle was living and essentially cut ties with my father, and he was not allowed to see us at all, even though it's in court records that he needs to see them on weekends, and it needs to be a reasonable distance that you live. She took him not paying child support as justification for taking the kids away. He took her taking the kids away as justification to not pay child support.
So these practices continue.
Yes, and there is, I believe, an open cold case. That's a lawyer term in Florida for back child support. Because when you get food stamps in America, the government will pay you in food stamps, but then they go after the party that's not paying child support and or alimony to recoup their money.
You had said in the special that poverty is a disease. Why do you refer to it as a disease?
Because for diseases, there are medicines like success and accomplishments is a medicine for the disease of poverty. But what doesn't go away is the actual mindset of poverty. It's something I still don't know how to break with today. It feels like it's out of my control, just like cancer, like cells proliferating with disregard for the organism. Uh, it is it's something that I don't even know how. I am aware of it, but I don't know how to control it. I still have a poverty mindset, a scarcity mindset, in that it doesn't matter what I accomplish. If I have an HBO special, if I'm on the Tonight Show, it feels like there's constantly going to be this rug pull, and that's pretty standard in entertainment. You're going for a it's like I saying I want to get a job as a unicorn. What it where it really hurts is in relationships and not being able to put roots in or make commitments in that way, because it always feels like a giant rug pull is coming. Like I might be woken up at midnight and might have to clear everything out of our double wide trailer and just throw it into the back of a moving truck. and go to the other side of a continent and
But
then
how does that how does that make it harder for you commitment wise in a relationship? Do you feel like you have to get up in the middle of the night and go to another state, city?
it's that is I don't know. I would be interested to get your read on it. It's hard to diagnose that because of my job is so much travel. So I can almost hide behind my job while being acutely aware of that fear that a rug pull is there. And just to put a finer point on it, like the way that manifests in romantic relationships is with women. Like I have a real problem letting like a woman take care of me or a partner take care of me, just because if I start to rely on that, it's just insane even saying it, but if it feels too good, it feels like I start to rely on that, that could leave at any moment. They could fall in love with someone else, they could find something unacceptable in me. So, the barrier that's putting up for me is it's not allowing me to be fully vulnerable with someone and do the true expression of love, which is giving up control and allowing yourself to truly fall in love with someone and truly trust someone, knowing the consequences that it might mean for your heart. So, the way it's been expressed to me by multiple women is not fully letting them in, not fully relaxing with them. Um, yeah, that's just how it's been told to me.
So you talked about how the most sinister symptom of poverty is fear, but now that you have means of your own, has that alleviated any of that fear or no?
It has a little bit. Yes, I no longer I can go to the front of a grocery store now. That is wow. They
Well,
light those places up. Those places, those fluorescent lights are fancy. Yes. So, yeah, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't this always like day to day fear. But I think this underlying fear that I've been unable to resolve and feels like a disease. If you ever get sick, the disease part is so odd because you lose control of your body. You have somewhat control of your mind and what you focus on, what you think of, but to feel this disconnect between your mind and your body where it feels like you don't have control. Similarly, in poverty, it feels like I know I have enough to make it to the next day. I know I'm not gonna do any insane behavior that's gonna cause this all to go away, but it still feels like I don't have control of stability. It feels like if I am stable and if I am in something, there's this underlying, like, anxiety hum under that of, "Okay, this is good. Wait, why does this feel good? This could go away. When is this gonna go away? This can't last forever."
do you want that to change or do you feel as though this is just the way it's going to be?
Oh, I desperately want it to change. It would be an insane person. I'd be pooping in my hand and smearing it on the webcam right now if I didn't want that to change. But I think that thing that I don't know how to dissolve and have felt close to dissolving and then fall two steps back, at least it feels like, is something I'm just not evolved enough or emotionally intelligent enough yet, I'll say, uh, to dissolve that within myself, to know how to let go of that fear and to trust someone.
But you must have a high degree, look, of maturity if you're, like you said, you're caring for four children now.
Yeah, and that's a thing I love. I don't know. Again, I want to let you get a word in here too. I don't want to be talking the whole time because I value your opinion on this
I
too.
appreciate
But
that.
I am the most relaxed when I can take care of someone. That's my favorite thing. In a partnership, if I'm with a woman, like never is she reaching for the wallet at dinner. I Everything is taken care of. I even like print out an itinerary in case the Wi-Fi goes down, in case God ends the world and takes all the Wi-Fi out. Uh, yeah, make like a detailed plan and love to be the provider for people. Now, that sounds sweet and like what someone would say in a dating reality show. but underneath that is not letting someone in and do that for me. I haven't experienced that before, and to a much more embarrassing extent, haven't let someone do that for me. So I like to take care of people. I feel rich when I take care of people, which if you look at any self-help books, they say like that's what you should do. If you're depressed, go out and do some charity work, take care of someone else. So it's a really hard thing to identify as toxic, yet dissolve it when our culture does reward that type of person, that behavior. My default is taking care of other people.
Do you
The kids is a little less toxic. I just love those kids. I love my sister. Um, I know it's a hard time, so whatever last dollar I have will, go to them.
do you have a chance to take care of yourself?
No. Well, I do, but I don't. I do have a chance, but yes, in full embarrassment, absolutely could. I recognize that, but I don't. I will hide behind other people's problems. I will take care of people so I don't really have to address myself.
You had analogized a modern day comedy special to a TED Talk. When I hear that, I mean, does that mean comedy's dead?
Oh, no, no. I just think that comedians drank the Kool Aid, to stay on the cult theme. Of There was all these in the late 2000s, in the Obama era, there was all this talk about how comedians are the last uh, bastion of freedom of speech, the only truth sayers, because the journalists lie and lawyers lie. I'm attacking your podcast right now.
That's
Uh,
okay.
Comedians are the only people speaking the truth, and I think some comedians drank the Kool-Aid on that, and they made comedy specials rather than being funny, they were important. And that I'd rather hear boos than, "Oh, yay, that's important." And there was a trend in comedy specials where people just took the first part of the best comedy advice you'll hear is tell the truth. They told the truth, but then they forgot to be the performer on top of that. Meaning, yes, you do tell the truth. You do talk about the things that are humiliating and unacceptable about yourself and disgusting and embarrassing, but then you also have to do the work to make it digestible for a crowd, make it entertainment. Because everyone in that room that bought a ticket to your show, all 4,000 people in that theater, they they are coming from their own life situation. They got a babysitter. The car was late. The Uber, they had to call a different one because their partner wasn't ready yet. And then they got in a fight about that on the way. And it is your job, what they're paying you for, is that for that hour, that block hour that they bought the terrible comedy club food, they got yelled at in line by someone else that thought they were cutting. Your job is to make them forget about that and entertain them. That's the power of entertainment is you can forget about your own life situation. And I think in the late 2000s, back to this point, doing the weave, it's comedians just did the first part of telling the truth, and they would just bum audiences out. They would just say their greatest trauma, and then either they didn't do the work internally or the industry rewarded them for not having to do the work. It's a chicken or the egg type of situation. But a lot of comedy specials were just feeling like they would bum you out, and we were all supposed to give them Emmys and applaud for talking about their trauma or the social injustice that happened to them. That stuff is true, and you should talk about that, but you should also be keenly aware that you are still the paid clown. So you better fill up your helium tanks, and you better get the right face makeup and do the work because you have the privilege of entertaining people. It is nothing feels like that in life. Performing on stage for people and making people laugh. It is such a privilege that I would pay to do it, and I know that because at the beginning I did pay to do it. You're not making a lot of money for many, many years, and you're struggling. So that's what I mean. I don't think it was dead. I think just comedians drank the Kool-Aid and believed the hype in the media and the thing that was being said at the time, that comedians were now supposed to be delivering what you would see on C-SPAN. And they stopped there and they didn't do the entertainment part. I will
I know you
now name names and burn bridges.
right. I know you said that you travel a lot for work, but is there a place you perform at regularly in California?
Not so much because California doesn't have, I guess the Improv is the home club. To give the short, boring answer, that was the first place I ever performed. And that's like the home club here, but it doesn't have the same culture of stand up that New York has, where it's the closest you'll ever get to the mafia. There's these little groups, and it's like a high school that's also the mafia. Well, much lower stakes, more like high school. I think I'm giving it too much credit, but the Comedy Cellar in New York is the end all be all if you're just into stand up and you want to see the best stand up, and you don't want to see someone doing a one person show about their parents' divorce, and you just want to see good stand up. Everyone is so good there. It takes a lot to get in. It's pretty cutthroat when you're in there and you have to do well every night. I would say the cellar is the most I've ever felt at home. As oh wow, this is a real dramatic sentence. As someone who never had a home, the Comedy Cellar in New York is the closest I've felt to I'm home. I know how to thrive
Wait,
in this hectic environment.
why leave New York then?
Um, I it was hard to be around someone I was in love with, but couldn't be with, and everything about that city and even the schedule of going to the Comedy Cellar was it wasn't good for me. And I get these like little windows of like how I can take care of myself, and if I don't jump on them I'll never do them. And I think it was ultimately something that was out of my control, as far as making that work out. And embarrassingly, very much in my control. And I don't know how to hold those two ideas together. But yeah, it was. I was not taking care of my uh, physical body. I was definitely taking care of my mind. Felt very stimulated there. Felt very passionate there, but just needed a break. So you come to LA, if you do 3 shows a night, people are like, "Wow, you work so hard." And in New York, I was doing 5 or 6 sets a night. Shows are different than sets. Sets are basically like
What time would
15.
you roll in? When does that night end? 4 or 5 in the morning?
Yes, which is great for relationships.
I'm sure.
Women love that when you come in all hyper because you just got off stage at 3 a.m. They're fully asleep. You start stimulating the cat. They love that. I highly recommend that for a relationship. Yeah, it ends around, probably the last show goes till like 2:30 in the morning. Maybe a little later, and then maybe you
And
talk
then
to
you go
people
out after
after.
that?
You don't go I don't go out. People do. I mean, I mainly stay at the club, home base, and then but you get caught talking to friends and comedians and even audience members, and then eventually you go home, and yeah, you're like uh, you feel like it's 7 a.m. and you're like, "All right, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start the day." Uh because if you are meant to do comedy, it's like you get energy from it. It doesn't deplete more than it gives. So it's an opposite schedule. So most holidays I work, weekend days, any days that most human beings in Western civilization are off, I am working.
So when you're off and you're not working, when you're not on stage, do you still get that sense of energy or do you find it hard?
No, no. Even being in LA, and not doing as much, it's like any drug where people build up a tolerance. Heroin addicts have to do more and more, and this is why fentanyl is so prominent. Why it is 80 times more potent than heroin itself. It's meeting that need. You could do more and more, and people on the street that aren't doing that, they get that heavy dose and they can't take it. So it is a source of energy, and it's so wrapped up in my mental health to a point where I recognize it is extremely unhealthy. But when I'm overworked and have multiple shows, it is so gross too because it's like attention. It's people approving of the things you say. Um, I feel at peace in me, and even when that drug is cut off of attention, accomplishment, audience stimulation, when that's cut off, I notice just that the depletion of serotonin in my own body.
So how much time do you spend writing up the comedy or do you not write it? Is it in your head?
It's all in my head, not by choice, but just from not having the confidence around reading and writing. Um, how I write stand up is for the listeners at home, I just point to a living room, just walk around and talk out loud like a psychopath, like what I would say on stage, or talk out a thought to get it boiled down to the least amount of words. I think a good majority of comedians actually go pen to paper and they write stuff out. I've never done it that way. I just have bullet points of a word that will remind me of the mind state I was in on this carpet here, pacing around like a psycho, talking about how come pretzels are so salty these days or whatever.
Does it all come from life experience or does any of it come from well, I know I was going to say from what you read, but you said you have challenged reading.
Yeah. Yeah. Reading and writing in the school part of being a performer is something I'm seriously lacking. To focus everything into a pen and paper and make it repeatable and make it a sure thing is something I'm lacking. Now, where you get rewarded for that and all the dyslexia propaganda that's out there, like Richard Branson, a virgin, is dyslexic, is you are more creative in the moment because you have to be. I'm a better listener because I have to be. As evidence of this podcast, where you've said 2 words and I've said 89. I'm a great listener.
A few
Uh,
more.
No, I just mean like you have to listen better because you can't take notes in class because it's gobbledygook to me to read something. Um, I get stimulated by conversation, so you are forced to connect with people more. I on stage am forced to be more in the moment because I'm not referring to notes. I'm referring to what's happening in the room. So it's not all negative. It's not uh, handicap victim. It does serve me in some ways, but I think the life challenge is finding the balance between those two. But I think most people write down jokes. I'm walking out loud, pacing around, trying to put zero distractions in front of me to do that, like turning off all the lights. Which going back to what partners like is, hey, can you leave the 2,000 square foot New York apartment so I could walk around the living room and talk about how come there's so many flavors of chips these days?
You're being serious.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There is I guess a sticking point is, and please interrupt me at any time. I need your help, Alan. I'm here for help.
Got it.
I a sticking point in relationships that's been a common thing is I have a high value. I would say too high of a value because most people, if I'm the common denominator, most women have said this is unacceptable. I have a real focus on having my own space where I'm completely alone so that I can create. If someone else is there that I love, it's not that they're annoying. It's that they are so interesting and I will find any excuse to not write and not work. I just want to talk to them. I just want to fix their problems. I want to take care of them. Uh, so I have had a hard time communicating that I need to be alone to make what I make, which brings all the money in. But it's not that you're annoying. It's not that I don't want your presence. The problem is I want your presence so much that I'll never get anything done. What's a better way to communicate that? Let's say you're a lawyer. Let's say I just murdered someone and this is my
I was
one
just gonna
out.
say maybe it may be time to get a bigger apartment. Would that work if someone's in
In
the
LA
other
it
room?
works. In LA it works, but
Okay.
not in New York. But what's in a real way, like what's a more loving way to communicate that?
Well, the communication is what? I need you to just evacuate and I'll call you when I'll call you.
Yeah, and it's an indeterminate amount of time. We're talking about this could be 15 minutes to this could be 4 hours.
I definitely don't think I've seen that one work. What about the possibility of you having a working space that isn't in the living space?
Yes, that's
Or
true.
does your
Because that's
comedic
money,
like
but that's more money. So if you go to a
correct?
place like New York where I feel like a better partner because I'm more stimulated and I'm getting all these gross attention needs met. Um, if you're not at a point in your career where you can afford that, or that's just not reasonable because you travel so much, so you can't really justify a $3,400 a month shoebox to write in. I guess it's overarching because it's happened in LA too. Every relationship I've ever had end has not been because I cheated or yelled or hit someone, whatever the what are the common relationship things or
You just hit
m-
on a few. Narcissism.
money is a thing. Yeah, the every single relationship to the best of my knowledge, and again, this is only come from one side, so other sides could say their piece, but this is not the truth. This is my version of the truth. Has just because my job has gotten in the way, meaning not just my job itself, but my focus on my work and the thing that I feel like makes me feel good and allowed me to meet all these wonderful people. It takes so much out of a partner, meaning me.
You the energy you get from being on stage though, is that something you never achieve with a romantic partner?
No, no, it's different. I mean, it's not worse, it's not better, it's different. It's a different thing. I think I do this thing so I can feel like myself and I can feel comfortable making mistakes in a relationship, saying the wrong thing, embarrassing myself, farting mid-sex because I've done this thing that makes me feel good about myself. And without that thing, I don't feel good and I don't feel safe enough to be fully vulnerable in front of someone without that.
You had said that people presume that poor people are stupid. Do you still believe that, or do you think that's more in your head?
I think yes. Overall, yes. In comedy terms, yes. You have to take the general, broad, insane. Of course, there's nuances to this argument. What makes a good stand-up joke is taking the extreme of one argument and blowing it out to just insane, turn the bases up to 11 version of it. But what I mean by that idea, and I don't fully agree with it, and there's many holes in the argument that people in America presume that poor people are stupid, is for if you grow up poor in this country, you don't have the same opportunity to find out what you need. So the reason I'm putting so much into these my new 4 kids I got in November and getting them into good schools and getting an apartment and the address that allows them to get into this good school district, is because there's more care and thought. But money buys you is it buys you time. It physically, the money can't buy happiness. It buys you time to think about your child. If you're not worried and you're a single mother of 8 and you're going to your job at IHOP and then you have to get on a bus to go to your job at the Hilton to clean, you can take that individual time with your child, find out what they need. If there's a problem in school and you don't have money, you can't say like, "Oh, let's get into the Sylvan Learning Center and let's find out what your disorder. Let's get you on the right medication." One, you don't have healthcare in this country. Two, there's a catch-all for kids that don't fit in as far as just intellectually, and they put them all in special ed. Special ed has become this catch-all. I would be interested to find the updated facts on this, but at least when I like early 2000s when I was in the school system. The one time I did go to middle school, I was placed in special ed, not just with like bad kids and people that had learning disabilities, but it was actual students with Down syndrome, people with cerebral palsy, and you are not learning at the same rate. And your confidence, if you're just someone that has a specific disorder, is dashed by the perception and how rude people treat people with disabilities in this country. You are roped in with them. And this catch all round everyone down to the lowest common denominator that is special ed. Uh, Again, I would say I'm only speaking anecdotally. I'm sure there's great special ed teachers out there, and I don't mean to shit on them. I'm just saying from my personal experience in a very specific middle school. We won't name names. John Adams Middle School in Venice Beach. They just put people into one container, and more than just not accelerate my learning or focus on my learning disability, what that session was when I was in middle school, public school, just because to get food stamps, we needed to get school records. So my mom enrolled me into school to forge the names and the grades for the rest of the kids. So we needed the LA Unified School District paperwork. So I was enrolled for
She
2 months.
forged the grades,
Yeah, the names.
the
The name
names.
the grades meaning, if you're in the UK, it's like year 7, year 8. The grades as far as what grades the kids are in,
I see.
middle school. But you get the same LA Unified stamp. I'm sure it's much harder to forage now with the digital era, but she was still on like whiteout in a typewriter, just whiting out my name, making a photocopy, and then typing my brother's name, and then submitting that to the social worker at the welfare office, and then we could continue to receive food stamps and welfare based on that. So I was just roped in with people that no one was addressing my needs because this kid is literally Thomas is having a seizure right there. This kid is yelling because he wanted to hold the bathroom key, even though everyone's supposed to have the bathroom key. He likes to hold the paddle because he has a fixation on textures. So, in my personal experience, individual needs were not met, and you don't have the time. Like if you grew up very wealthy, you're on the Upper East Side, you could get your kid a tutor. You could have the time to take off work to figure out what's happening with your child. Is this an emotional? Is this a chemical imbalance? So when a poor person is stupid, to end this 88 paragraph sentence, when someone is, well, maybe they're not the most intelligent and they're below a certain socioeconomic line, it's not surprising. It's not that it's expected, it's just not surprising. The example I use in the HBO special is the one time a very poor person is smart. It's such a big deal. It's a movie. They made a movie out of it called Goodwill Hunting, where this idiot that mops the floor, this lowest, spit on the janitor, When he understands math, it's so mind blowing that that is the catch of the movie. Not superheroes defying physics. It's this poor person actually is doing smart.
So let me ask you, having grown up the way you did when you said under the poverty line, when you said the word unhoused as a half measure to make us feel better, what did you mean by that?
Oh yeah, okay. This is great because this came from a real experience of I was talking about how I grew up, where there was a period where my mom tried to get some boyfriends that would maybe be our new daddies. Uh, and there was a gap where she was living in a house, and then there was like a very small yard, and then a detached garage. And we were five of us. So all four of my siblings were living in a garage, no running water. Not only that, we couldn't make a noise all day to not tip off the other roommates and or the landlord that's living in the main house. And then we lost that. We got evicted from that, so we were homeless. That's how we've always said it growing up. And I'm talking about my own experience. I'm not saying on stage, homeless people are stupid and they smell bad. I'm talking about my own experience, right? And multiple times, very upper crust liberal brooches. They still have the Bernie bumper sticker on. Would come up to me and be like, this is a beautiful story you shared, but you shouldn't say homeless. That's like a derogatory term. You should say unhoused. So this came up three times, which is enough to say this came up a lot in hyperbole speak. But so then I initially past that feeling of anger of like I, I'm I'm sorry I bummed you out with my own personal experience. We were called homeless because that's what they called us. They named me that. Not not I didn't choose that. That's just what we were. So unhoused is this very far left liberal term that we've come up with to not address the issue. If any of those people that complained about me saying homeless versus unhoused were actually there to help out, meaning if it was a $5 Ross Dress for Less gift card, that would have been better than the term unhoused. And so that's the initial anger response. But then as a human being, you have to do the deeper level of research. Where does that come from? I think everyone is a decent person at the end of the day and they want to do good. And the idea of poverty in America is such a big issue. It's such this untackleable issue. There's no one fix for it. There's no one solution that we want to feel like we have some control over it. What can I do to help? Well, what if we stop calling them homeless in this derogatory term? What if we stop making fun of them and looking down on them? Okay, let's come up with unhoused. So it's their version of here's what I can do to help. This is the change I have in my pocket right now to help. So it wasn't that I disagree with the term unhoused. It was just unpacking the nuances of why we use that term, why homeless is offensive, because it's you're speaking to people that have tried to do what they can do. They've tried to do the work. It is so untackleable. It is so much larger than our understanding. It is so engineered against people that are poor in this country in a capitalist society that rewards people making money and the poor get poorer and the rich get richer, that you can't fix it. But by controlling the terms that we call, people feel like it's some solace, like you did something. And I stood up to this term, and it doesn't actually help. If you see a unhoused person today and you walk by them and go, "You're unhoused," that's gonna do nothing for their day. It's not gonna make them any warmer on the street. It's not gonna relieve any anxiety. It's not gonna fix the drug epidemic. It's not gonna fix their family trauma. It's a half measure. But it's coming from a point of this is what I mean when I say communities need to do the work. You need to understand both points of views and empathize with both points of views. The initial my anger response, what the fuck? I'm sorry I bummed you out with my own personal experience. And then having the empathy to say, well, why did they bring this up? Well, because that is the most they could do in that moment to fix the unfixable.
So, what did you mean when you said crazy beats scary?
That was how I closed the HBO special. It's the last line of the special, and the first line too. Everyone loves a bookend. Um, I wasn't going to pretend in 2022 that I had this giant takeaway. I am hyper aware. I'm deeply flawed, selfish, talk too much, sometimes have an annoying voice. Um, Selfish, egotistical. I'm not going to pretend to talk down to anyone like a TED Talk special does. The only takeaway I had at that moment is that, okay, the one solace is that if you are in a scary situation, to give the people the bookended version, I was having sex with a car and the car was broken into while her and I were in there. And I was just out of sheer my fear reaction, it scared the person that was breaking into the car off. And that was the one takeaway of like, okay, what's the what's the one spoonful of sugar I can take with this medicine that goes down is that sometimes if you're in a scary situation, how crazy your life has been and everything you've had to go through, sometimes that can actually help you.
So,
And we didn't choose it, but then it's not all bad. And it's not an hour of me saying, here's my trauma, feel bad for me. Because everyone in that room has their own stuff that they've had to deal with and their own things to
after
overcome.
after what you've been through, do you think what happens to you in life comes down to luck or fate?
I don't know. I wish it was fate. I can tell you that. Don't know anything. I wish it was fate. It would get me out of my head. It would ease some anxiety. It would ease some fears as far as the people that depend on me financially and emotionally. That if it was all predestined and laid out, I wouldn't feel like I'm making a mistake at every turn. So I hope it's fate. I am grateful for the times I recognize that it has been luck. Right place, right time. Happened to be doing the show. Conan O'Brien, my hero, his people happen to see me and they bring me on his show, and then everything changes. Grateful for the times it's luck and desperately wish that it was fate.
I noticed, are you wearing a wedding ring?
If you talk to the other party, they will say it's not a proper engagement ring.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm more proud of myself more than anything of being able to make that type of commitment. My definition of the it's a wedding ring to me, I'll say. Um, a little bit of advice for guys, you can't the wedding rings are from this boutique artist that I like in New York, and she makes great jewelry. I'm not gonna put her on blast because I'm about to say something very negative. Um, but it's an artist I really enjoyed. It was like really special to me. So I got to it was relatively expensive rings from this artist to engage to someone. The problem is, before that, I went name brand jewelry. You can go boutique, artsy fartsy. Here's a piece of twig that means something to me, and then you can graduate to Cartier and Tiffany. You can't start at Cartier, Tiffany, De Beers, and then go artsy fartsy. And I think that's where I made the mistake. I don't. She didn't like the ring. As much as I know this person, as much presumption that I could make, yeah, didn't like the ring.
Do you want to get married? Or do you feel like you're already on the path because you're engaged? in
I'm not
spirit.
engaged anymore. I'm just a psycho that's wearing it. It's I guess I don't know. It was so the engagement ending, or the, let's just say, relationship, to be fair to both sides, ending, it was so there's such a mutual understanding. This is someone I'm still very good friends with, someone I love more than anything, and it was just a very clear circumstance thing, meaning my job, my health, my emotional maturity, all these things lined up where these are two people that love each other, but this is just not it just doesn't fit right now. It just doesn't work. And no parties can make it work even though they have tried their best. But it's odd to have an immense amount of love and respect for someone, but it's not like you're this obsessed ex where you're waiting outside their door and following them around. It's just yeah, it's like it's one of the most beautiful relationships I've ever had, where and it's even more beautiful in the breaking of the way it broke. The way it breaks is more beautiful than coming together and just be running on high on chemicals and be horny and caught up in that first drunk love part. Um, yeah, and I think I was just I don't know, it was as embarrassing as it sounds, just proud of myself for knowing I did everything I was capable of.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for giving us the time this evening. I do want to ask you, before we part, anything that you want to share, say to somebody that you feel like you have not shared or said before.
Um,
I mean, I get that that question's a tall order.
could I just say the thing and not say who it's for?
Sure.
Okay, I love you, and I'm sorry.
Very sweet. Very sweet. Okay, Moses, thank you so much. And let's hope that this recording auto saves, because if it doesn't, I'm never
How are we
using
gonna
this.
redo
I'm
this?
really done with this program if it doesn't work.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I really
Thanks,
appreciate
man.
you having me.
Of course. Be well.